Liberty is not served by inserting the state between patients and their doctors, and morality is not served by withholding help from the sick.
Well, one of the things I was struck with when I was going through chemotherapy is that every doctor and nurse I dealt with had had patients who had used medical marijuana. Every one of them. And none of them had discouraged this. But of course, you know, you can't prescribe it. It's illegal. So they said, well, you know, smoke it in the bathroom of your room. Don't, like, do it out in the hall. And that just struck me as a crazy situation.
Buckley was a formidable intellect, a man of ideas. Even when some of us thought his ideas were wrong, we had to respect his grappling with ideas. But none of the celebrity standard bearers who have replaced him as spokesman or voices of the conservative movement, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Sarah Palin, Rush Limbaugh, would last a minute on firing line. What's your take on Sarah Palin's appeal as a conservative voice today?
Well, look, Cole Porter wrote a song, You've Got That Thing, That Certain Thing That Makes the Birdies Forget to Sing. Well, Sarah Palin has that. You know, you can look at certain politicians and just say, oh, okay. You know, that person really has something. That is a quality that she has. I think a lot of conservatives identify with her life situation, her life story, the mother who's the governor, and you know, the sort of the frontier aspects of Alaska. When she was on that cover, was it Newsweek, when she had the shotgun that she was carrying over her shoulder, you know, and people respond to that very powerfully. Now, can she have the stuff to be a viable presidential candidate or a viable president? That is something we just have to see in the grinding of the mills of this process.
Let me ask you something that you write about in the introduction to your book. Quote, in the age of Obama, conservatism is in retreat, though perhaps its retreat began back with Bill Clinton or the Bushes, father and son. But it will be back, and its ups and downs are of interest to conservatives, their enemies, and ordinary Americans. I mean, why should the ups and downs of the conservative movement be of concern to anyone who's not in that movement?
For the same reason that the ups and downs of the liberal movement are interesting to me. I mean, these are forces in our body politic that have an effect on all of our lives. You know, whether we agree with them or oppose them, they're out there. These are the places where the ideas are generated and disseminated. It's very powerful and influential, and so it's worth paying attention to.
Is Obama the embodiment, as you see it, of the liberalism of our time? And if so, what does that say about liberalism?
Obama is a complicated phenomenon because he is a great historical achievement. I mean, I covered his inauguration for the NewsHour, and that was a moving moment. I did not vote for him, but I think it was an important moment in American history. Finally, all men are created equal becomes real in a way that it had not been until that moment. So that's one aspect of him. But then there are also, well, okay, Mr. President, what do we do today? Yeah. There's also that, and he's a very liberal politician, but he's got, you know, at least 3.5 more years to go, and that's a lot of policy time that has to be filled, and we're going to see how well he does it.
Buckley believed conservatives had to use the Republican Party as their vehicle because there were no other choices. There's no distinction today, is there? The Republican Party and the conservative movement are one and the same.
Well, some places there's still distinction. New York's 23rd congressional district to fill, was it John McHugh's seat, the man who Obama named Secretary of the Army, and this is up in the Adirondacks. It's a pretty conservative district. So the local Republican Party picked a woman to be the nominee for that seat, and she's pro-abortion, and she's pro-gay marriage, and she was for cash for clunkers, and she was for the stimulus package, and then now New York State has a conservative party, and they have nominated another person to challenge her. So it's a three person race there.
Conservatives worked hard for President Bush in the 2000 election after the primaries, and they worked hard for his re-election in 2004. And then after he made a wreck of things, they abandoned him, abandoned the man who had been their agent. What happened there?
There were always things about Bush that National Review did not like. We never bought compassionate conservatism. It struck us partly as an empty slogan, and to the extent it had any content, we didn't like it. 9/11, in our view, changed everything. Certainly changed George Bush's world. He was not expecting to be a foreign policy president. He just wasn't. And then all of a sudden, here we are. And this is the 30 Years' War, in my view. I will not see the end of it. I will not see the end of the forces that were unleashed on 9/11. So that, to me and many conservatives, became the primary thing, and that's why we continued to back Bush. And in terms of his making a wreck of it, I would just say as a historian, if presidential reputations are stocks, buy George W. Bush. If it moves at all, it will go up. And I will predict he will be like Ulysses Grant, who's finally being recognized as actually a pretty good president after 100 years, 150 years of abuse from patrician historians and converted Confederates.
What have you taken away from digging so deeply and writing so broadly about the founding era and the founding fathers?
These were all politicians. They were just like politicians today. They made deals, they stabbed each other in the back, they did all the black arts of politics. But they were also idealists and great men. And so into that daily world of politics, they infused something important, and they achieved something that's been going on for over 200 years and that is still alive and valuable. And that's worth looking at. Just how does that happen?
Can we really know what the founders would think about our world? And should we care?
Well, 2 points. One is that they're not that far away from us. I mean, it's not like Charlemagne, right, or Alfred the Great. A little over 200 years is not that long when you look at all the countries in the world. The other thing is the founders believed in human nature. That's what the Declaration begins by talking about the rights that we have as men. That's what Tom Paine wrote about. That's what they all believed. So if they were right, then certain, the observations and the discoveries that they made have an ongoing relevance. And of course things change, a million things change, but we're still men. We're still men and women. We're still human. And certain qualities that we have, aspirations, needs, flaws, have not changed and never will change. And so how these men navigate all that is of ongoing interest.
I confess that I admired Bill Buckley because he believed there was more to life than politics. And I think he must have been proud of the way you lived your life, because you've written all of these books. And all of us who have enjoyed your books are indebted to Bill Buckley because he changed his mind about you, right?
Yes, he told me when I was 23 that I would succeed him as editor of National Review, and then he told me when I was 32, no, you're not going to do that.
He had picked you as his heir, and you came back from lunch one day, and there was a letter. What did it say?
It was a long letter, but the meat of it was you don't have executive flair, and it would be wrong for me to inflict you on National Review and National Review on you. That's in effect what it said.
So he gave you all that time to research and write those books on the founding fathers, Washington, Hamilton, Adams, now Madison you are working on, right?
Well, I had to figure that out, though. I mean, when I read that letter, I was not thinking of writing founding father books. I mean, this was like, okay, now I have to do plan B in my life, and by the way, what is that? I didn't know. And it was a process of figuring that out. One thing I had to do was reestablish my relationship with my hero here, who's dealt me this very odd wild card. I mean, I was furious. I was enraged. I was furious. Yes, of course, all of those things. What did you do? Well, I was mad. I mean, I told my wife. I didn't tell hardly anybody else, but I wrote Bill a letter. I quoted William Blake in it. I said I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. So I said what you did was contemptible. But then, then I had to figure out what do I do and how do I relate to this man? And that took a while. It took effort on both our parts. But, you know, the other line of poetry, more important than that, Blake, that was just anger. Robert Frost said, "We love the things we love for what they are." And to do that, you have to know what they are. You have to really know what they are. And both of us had had mistaken notions of the other one. I mean, I thought, here's the perfect father, the like perfect writerly father. And he thought, here's my heir, here's another me, you know. Well, we were both wrong. So then, having discovered we were wrong, then we have to figure out, okay, who is this other person really, and how do I connect with him? And I think we were able to do that.
The book is Right Time, Right Place, Coming of Age with William F. Buckley, Jr. Richard Brookhiser, thanks for coming back to the Journal.
Thank you.